You know how people say the worst things come when everything seems normal? Yeah, I used to think that was just something people said after the fact, like they were trying to sound deep when really, they just missed all the signs. But let me tell you, normal is a lie. It's the mask life puts on before it sucker punches you in the face. I came home on a Wednesday, nothing special about it. Weather was decent, not too hot, not too cold. The kind of day you forget immediately unless something huge happens to burn it into your memory. Something did. I walked into the house with a burrito in one hand and a set of keys in the other, ready to drop onto the couch and watch whatever garbage was playing on TV. I wasn't expecting anything, and that's what made it so jarring. Our dog, my dog, really, didn't come greet me like he usually did. Rex is a Labrador and lives for company, but that day, he was shut in the backyard, whining at the glass door. I thought maybe my wife just forgot he was out there, but that wasn't like her. She's the type to light a candle and set up a snack tray just to watch a 30-minute show. Meticulous. The kind of person who folds dish towels into perfect thirds like we were living in a hotel suite. So I opened the back door, let Rex in, gave him a quick pat, and then I heard something strange. Not loud. Just out of place. Like a chair being dragged slowly. Not the kitchen chairs. We had these stupid felt pads on the legs, so they wouldn't scratch the floor. This was metal on concrete. That meant the garage. I don't usually go into the garage unless I need tools. It's where she stored some of her art supplies. Natalie, my wife, paints when she's stressed or bored, and since we don't have kids, she's got time for that kind of thing. But when I cracked the door open that day, it wasn't the smell of paint or the sight of an easel that hit me. It was voices. Muffled, close. Two of them. One was hers. The other was a guy. I froze. I didn't storm in. I didn't shout. I listened. His voice was lower, casual, too familiar. I couldn't catch full sentences, just tones, hers, giggly and soft, like how she used to talk to me when we first met, and his, confident and almost territorial, like he belonged there. My gut twisted, but I wasn't jumping to conclusions. Maybe it was her cousin visiting or someone from her art group. Maybe they were just hanging out. Maybe I was just being paranoid because she'd been distant lately and I was trying to find patterns that weren't there. But when I saw the second pair of shoes by the door, next to hers, Nike Airs that sure as hell weren't mine, my stomach dropped. I didn't go in. I backed away and sat on the patio bench, trying to make sense of what I just walked into. I could have kicked the door open, started yelling, flipped the whole thing into a scene, but something held me back. Maybe it was disbelief. Maybe it was the kind of cold clarity that only shows up when your brain realizes your life is splitting down the middle. 15 minutes passed. Maybe more. The voices died down. I heard footsteps and a laugh, and then the door opened. I turned my head just enough to catch her profile. She was standing there with a water bottle in one hand, wiping her forehead like she'd been working out. Her hair was tied back, loose strands stuck to her face, and her tank top was damp at the collar. Not exactly the look of someone who'd been painting. She hadn't noticed me. The guy behind her, mid-30s, lean, tattoo running up one arm, the kind of dude who wears gym shorts and never skips arm day, handed her a phone, said something quiet that made her smile, and then he walked out the side door without ever seeing me. She stayed there a second longer, like she was floating, and then turned back inside. I stood up, walked into the house like nothing was out of the ordinary, and found her in the kitchen pouring herself a glass of water. She didn't flinch when she saw me. "Hey, you're home early," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Her tone was flat, casual. Too casual. "Garage workout?" I asked, watching her closely. Her hand froze halfway to her mouth. "Yeah," she said after a beat. "Figured I'd switch it up. Too crowded at the gym." "And the guy?" She blinked. "What guy?" "The one who left out the side door. The one who was in there with you." "Oh," she said, drawing the word out like she was buying time. "That's Trevor. He's from my yoga group. He was helping me move some stuff around." "Helping you breathe heavy and laugh like a teenager?" She stared at me, eyes narrowing. "Are you spying on me now?" "I came home, Natalie. You didn't hear the door." She didn't answer that. Just sipped her water and leaned against the counter. The silence stretched too long. "You want to try that again?" I asked, my voice lower this time, tighter. Because what I saw didn't look like yoga. She looked right at me then, and her face changed. Something in her dropped. The act, maybe. The performance of pretending this wasn't what it obviously was. She set the glass down carefully, like she needed both hands free to brace for what was coming. "Okay," she said. "So what if I had someone over? You're barely here anymore. You spend more time at work or on your hobbies than with me. What, now you care? I took a step closer, not yelling, not shaking, just trying to hold on to the last shred of calm I had left. You know what's funny? I said. I've been coming home earlier lately. Skipping poker night. Canceled that weekend trip with the guys. You didn't notice because you were too busy playing house with someone else in the garage. Her lips parted, like she was about to fight back, but nothing came out. She looked tired suddenly, like the weight of keeping this secret had just caved in. I didn't plan it, she said quietly. No, I said, but you let it happen. And that's worse. She looked at the floor like it might open up and swallow her. Maybe she was hoping it would. I walked past her, grabbed Rex's leash from the hook, and headed for the front door. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I couldn't sit in that house a minute longer. I'm not the one who left first, she called after me. I stopped, hand on the doorknob. What? You left this marriage long before I did. You just didn't cheat physically, so you think you're better. I turned, looked her in the eyes, and said, you had choices, Natalie. You could have told me you were unhappy. You could have fought for this. But you chose the easy way. And you know what that makes you? A coward. Then I walked out, pulling the door shut behind me hard enough to make the frames rattle. Rex trotted beside me, tail wagging, clueless to the mess we were walking away from. My hands were shaking, but my head was clearer than it had been in weeks. You don't unhear something like that. You don't unsee a lie told with a straight face. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever this was, it wasn't normal anymore. I didn't go to a bar. I didn't call a friend. I just walked. For blocks. Maybe a mile or two. Rex kept up, tongue out, tail swinging like everything was fine, like nothing had changed, like my whole life hadn't just flipped inside out in the middle of a regular afternoon. I ended up at the public park, sitting on a cold bench near the basketball court where a few teenagers were shooting hoops and yelling at each other over missed passes. It was stupid, but I watched them for a while. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to be in the same space where she stood barefoot in the kitchen pretending she hadn't just disrespected everything we built. It wasn't even the garage part that got to me the most. It was her face when I caught her lying. That quiet calculation. Like she was measuring how much truth I could handle without making a scene. I stayed out until it got dark. Didn't answer her messages. Didn't respond to the "where are you?" or the "can we talk?" She didn't call. Just texts. Cowardly little texts from a woman who had the guts to invite another man into our space, but not enough to admit it when it mattered. I only went back because Rex was getting hungry and I didn't want to punish him for her choices. When I walked in, she was sitting on the couch, legs crossed, wrapped in a blanket like she'd been the one hurt. I didn't say anything. Walked right past her, filled Rex's bowl, and then stood in the kitchen staring at the dark window over the sink. She came in slowly, like she was entering a stranger's house. Chris, she said softly, you didn't come home for hours. I didn't look at her. And, we need to talk. I've got nothing to say, I replied. You don't want to hear my side? There's only one side when someone sneaks around. It's not a discussion. It's math. You plus him, behind my back. That's all the information I need. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She leaned against the counter across from me. I never meant for it to happen, she started, her voice cracking like she expected sympathy. But you let it, I said, cutting her off. You let it happen. Here. In our house. In the garage I built shelves in while you brought out lemonade. That's the part one can't get past. You didn't just cheat, Natalie. You trashed our whole life. Quietly. Like it was nothing. She didn't respond right away. She just stared at the floor. I was lonely, she said. You were always busy. Fixing things. Working late. Doing stuff on your own. You stopped paying attention to me. Are you serious right now? I asked, finally turning to face her. You're blaming me? I'm explaining, she said quickly. Not blaming. I stared at her, taking in her face like I was seeing it for the first time. I thought about every time I canceled a night out because she wanted to stay in. Every time I came home early to have dinner with her. Every time I gave up sleep to fix some small thing around the house so she wouldn't have to worry. And now she wanted to tell me I was too distant? I was building a life for us, I said. I was trying to give us something solid. You think I enjoyed being tired all the time? You think I wanted to always be the one holding everything together? You didn't ask. You didn't say you were unhappy. You went around and found someone else instead. She didn't try to argue that part. Just stood there with her arms crossed, shoulders tight like she was holding something in. It wasn't serious, she mumbled. Doesn't matter, I snapped. You crossed a line. Doesn't matter if it was once or 100 times. You betrayed me. You broke something that doesn't get fixed with a conversation. I wanted to feel wanted again, she said quietly, barely above a whisper. And what am I, Natalie? What have I been all these years? Furniture? Background noise. Her eyes finally lifted to mine, and for a second, she looked like she wanted to cry, but no tears came. I think that's when I knew it wasn't just a mistake. She had made peace with it. She'd done the math herself and decided I was worth less than her temporary need for attention. You don't get to play hurt now, I said. You made a decision. I just happened to catch it. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. No, you didn't mean for me to find out at all. That's the difference. The silence between us stretched, thick and choking. Finally, she pushed off the counter and walked out of the kitchen. I heard her go up the stairs. Probably to hide, maybe to cry, maybe to text that guy and tell him things were blowing up. I didn't care. I stood there until the house felt unfamiliar, like I'd walked into someone else's life. Then I grabbed a beer, sat down at the kitchen table, and stared at nothing. I didn't sleep in our bed that night. I stayed on the couch with Rex at my feet. She didn't come down. Maybe she figured it was better that way. Or maybe she was too ashamed. Either way, I wasn't chasing her up those stairs. Not now. Not after everything. In the morning, I'd start making calls. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't going to be swept under the rug. Not this time. Not ever. I woke up stiff from the couch with Rex snoring at my feet and a stiff neck reminding me I wasn't built for sleeping on cheap cushions. The house was quiet. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful but tense, like it's waiting for someone to make the first move. I didn't move right away. I sat there, letting the sun creep across the floor while I stared at the hallway where she had disappeared the night before. Eventually, I stood up, walked into the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the table like I had any normal morning. But this wasn't a normal morning. This was the morning after finding out that my wife of 8 years had invited someone else into our home, into the space we were supposed to be building together. She came down about 20 minutes later, hair tied up, wearing a hoodie I hadn't seen in months. Probably one of the ones she used to wear to yoga class before that excuse became something else entirely. She didn't say anything right away. Just sat down across from me at the table and looked at the coffee pot like she expected it to say something. I didn't sleep, she said. I figured. I replied without looking up. Can we talk now? If you want to explain something, I'm listening, I said. But don't expect me to make this easier. She pulled the sleeves of her hoodie down over her hands and rubbed them together, nervous like she was about to ask for a raise at a job she knew she didn't deserve to keep. She stared at the table for a long time before she finally spoke. I didn't start it because I hated you, she said. I didn't do it to punish you or to destroy us. It wasn't planned. But it was allowed, I replied. You let it happen. You invited it. Yes, she admitted. I did. And I don't know how to explain it in a way that makes it better. You can't, I said. Nothing you say makes it better. I felt invisible, she said. And before you say anything, I know that's not an excuse. I know I could have talked to you. I know I should have. But every time I tried, I felt like you were already miles away. That's rich coming from someone who's been sneaking around, I said. Do you even hear yourself? I'm not blaming you, she said quickly. I'm just telling you how it got to that point. And who is he? I asked. Is this still going on? Or did you decide to stop now that you got caught? He's not important, she said, which immediately told me he was more important than she wanted me to believe. No, see, he is important, I said. Because he was in our house. In our garage. While I was at work. Probably while I was out buying groceries or doing some chore you didn't want to do. So yeah, I think I get to know who he is. He's someone from the gym, she said quietly. We talked a few times. He was funny. Easy to be around. It started with messages, then coffee, then. I cut her off. I don't need the details. She nodded slowly, folding her arms like she was trying to keep herself from falling apart. So now what? She asked. I leaned back in the chair and stared at her. Now I decide how much more of this I'm willing to tolerate. Now I figure out whether I want to spend the next 10 years wondering if you're lying every time you say you're going out. I understand, she said. I know I've put everything at risk. I don't expect forgiveness. I just didn't want it to end like this. It didn't end because of what I did, I said. It ended because you made choices that you couldn't undo. You didn't just step over a line. You built a whole second life behind my back. I didn't love him, she said. That makes it worse, I snapped. You threw all this away for someone who didn't even matter? That's not a defense, Natalie. That just proves how little this meant to you. She didn't argue. She sat there, eyes red, not crying but close. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was just final. I don't know if I can fix this, I said after a long pause. I'm not saying I'm filing papers today, but I can't promise I'll still be here in a month. I'll move out if you want me to, she said. No, I replied. I'm not the one who should leave. If you need to be somewhere else to think, go. But I'm staying right here. She nodded again and stood up slowly, like her body was heavier than before. Maybe it was. I didn't watch her walk away. I didn't want to see her from the back anymore. Too many lies had been told with that face turned towards someone else. She packed a bag that afternoon and left without asking where she should go. I didn't ask either. I didn't care. The house was quieter than ever, but it wasn't peaceful. Just empty. I cleaned the garage later that day, took out everything she had stored in there, moved it all into the basement, and locked the door behind me. I didn't want her memories in that space anymore. That was mine now. I didn't call anyone. Not yet. I wasn't ready to talk about it out loud. Not until I knew what I wanted to say. But the anger was fading, and something colder was settling in. Not forgiveness. Not acceptance. Just clarity. She crossed the line, and now I had to figure out what kind of man I wanted to be on the other side of it. 2 days passed before I stopped checking the driveway to see if she'd come back. I didn't answer her messages. She sent 5 the first day, 3 the next. All short, all empty. Things like, can we talk? Or, I miss you. One even said she was ready to be honest now, which was probably the most laughable one of the bunch. She had her chance to be honest when I asked her directly, and she chose to hide. You can't ask for a second shot at telling the truth when you already used the first one to lie. On the 3rd day, I pulled into the driveway after work and saw a car parked across the street. It was some black SUV I didn't recognize. I watched it for a second before walking into the house. About 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find her standing there holding a takeout bag and a cautious smile like this was still her place. I didn't say anything. I stepped back and let her in, not because I forgave her or wanted to eat with her, but because I wanted her to say whatever she came to say and then leave. She set the bag on the counter and started unpacking boxes like we were on some date. I leaned against the fridge, arms crossed, staring at her the whole time. I thought maybe you hadn't eaten, she said. I got your usual. You shouldn't be here, I said. I just needed to see you, she replied. No, you needed to say something without texting it. Because you know I wasn't going to reply, I corrected her. So say it. She looked up, caught off guard by how direct I was, then sighed and leaned against the sink. I messed up, she said. I know that. I've been sitting with it. I've been thinking about how I ended up there. And I realized something. Let me guess, I interrupted. You were emotionally neglected, and this guy made you feel seen. She shook her head. That's what I told myself at first. But that wasn't it. It was boredom. And I hate saying that, but it's the truth. I got comfortable. I started thinking that maybe life had passed me by. And when someone new showed up, I didn't think about the consequences. I just thought about how I felt in the moment. So it was about attention, I said flatly. Yeah, she admitted. I didn't think I'd go that far. But I did. And then I crossed a line, and after that, I convinced myself that it didn't matter anymore. You kept going, I reminded her. It wasn't a single mistake. It was a routine, one that you protected and lied about. She looked down. I know. No, I said, I don't think you do. Because if you knew what it cost, you wouldn't be standing here trying to drop off food like that fixes anything. She stepped forward. I don't expect food to fix anything. I just thought it might be a start. There is no start, I replied. There's only an end. You made that choice. I'm just the one left to deal with the pieces. I'm not seeing him anymore, she said. That's good for you, I said. Doesn't change anything for me. I ended it, she repeated. Why? Because I found out? No, she said, because it didn't mean anything. I thought it did. But when you found out, and I saw how you looked at me, I realized I threw away something real for something temporary. I ruined it. I stood there, letting her words hang in the air, waiting for something that would make a difference, but nothing did. You didn't just ruin something, I said. You showed me what kind of person you really are. And that's not something I can unsee. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She just nodded slowly and looked at the counter. So what now? She asked. Now, I said. Now I make sure you understand what betrayal feels like when it's not hidden in polite conversations. I walked into the living room, grabbed the manila envelope from the drawer where I'd stuffed it that morning, and dropped it on the counter in front of her. What's this? She asked. Everything I found, I said. Screenshots, photos, call logs. I printed them. I even pulled video from the home security camera in the garage. You forgot we had one tucked up in the corner above the shelving unit. Her face lost all color. She didn't speak. I sent copies to your parents, I said. And to your sister. I didn't add commentary. Just sent the files. I figured they'd appreciate knowing why you disappeared for 3 days and why I'm not returning any holiday invites. She reached for the envelope, but I slapped my hand over it. I also printed another copy, I continued. It's going to your boss. I'm not sure what kind of policy they have on workplace affairs, but since you told me he was from the gym, and I found messages that say otherwise, I thought they might want to know. You didn't, she said, her voice shaking. I did, I said. You lied in this house, behind my back, with a smile on your face. You made choices knowing I'd be the one cleaning it up. So now, you get to clean up too. That could ruin my job, she said, stunned. I know, I said calmly. That's the point. She stood there for a few seconds like her body couldn't decide whether to run or stay. I didn't care what she did next. She picked up the bag of food she brought, then put it back down and walked out the door without another word. When the door clicked shut, Rex looked at me and whined once like he was confused. I patted his head and sat down at the table again. I didn't feel better, but I felt clearer. She wanted attention. She got it. Now it was her turn to deal with the weight of her choices. She came back on a Sunday. It had been 4 days since I handed her the envelope and watched her walk out with her mouth shut and her pride cracked wide open. I hadn't expected to see her again so soon, and I definitely didn't expect her to come in without knocking. She still had her keys. That was my mistake. I was halfway through cleaning out the bedroom closet when I heard the door open and close. She walked in quietly like she wasn't sure she was allowed to be here. I looked over my shoulder, then went back to folding clothes into a donation box. I didn't ask why she came. I didn't offer her a seat or a drink. I waited for her to get to the point. I came to talk, she said, her voice low but steady. I figured, I said without turning. I know what you sent to people, she continued. I spoke to my parents. I also got a message from my boss asking to meet first thing tomorrow. I kept packing. Good. She stood near the doorway, hands in her coat pockets, eyes scanning the room. She saw the open suitcase on the bed and the empty hangers piled on the dresser. Are you leaving? She asked. I haven't decided yet, I said. But I'm making sure it's an option. She nodded slowly, biting her lip like she was trying to keep herself from saying the wrong thing. You had every right, she said, to sin what you did. I don't blame you for any of it. I stopped and turned to face her. I didn't do it to get revenge. I did it so you'd understand what it feels like when your choices show up where you don't expect them. I do understand now, she said. And I know saying that doesn't fix anything. No, it doesn't, I replied. You don't get to cheat, lie, walk out, and then walk back in and say you've learned something. I'm not asking you to take me back, she said quickly. I know better than that. But I need to talk to you like a person. Not as your wife, not as someone who wants forgiveness, just as someone who knows they destroyed something and needs to say what's left. I sat on the edge of the bed and crossed my arms. All right, talk. She stepped into the room and sat on the floor. Not the chair, not the bed, she sat on the carpet like she didn't deserve to sit any higher. I watched her as she took a breath. When I first met him, it wasn't about you, she started. It wasn't about replacing you or finding someone better. It was about escaping. I felt stuck. I didn't hate you. I wasn't even angry. I was just numb. Like everything in my life had settled into this routine that didn't feel like mine anymore. You could have told me that, I said. I know, she replied, but I didn't want to admit it out loud. I thought if I said it, it would mean our marriage was broken. I didn't want to believe that. But you believed it enough to cheat. Yes, she said, without flinching. I did. And that's what I have to live with now. Not just the shame. Not just the people who saw those files. I have to live with the fact that I was too weak to talk to you, and instead I made a mess that can't be cleaned up. You could have asked for space, I said. You could have said you needed time. But instead, you hid in the garage with another man and then lied to my face. I thought I could handle it, she said. I thought I could have this one thing and then walk away. But I didn't walk away. I kept going. And when you caught me, I realized I hadn't just ruined our relationship. I ruined who I was to you. You were my wife, I said. You were my partner. I trusted you. I know, she said. And I broke that. I just need you to know I'm not going to run from what I did. Whatever happens with my job, with my family, with my life now, it's on me. I won't hide from it. I stared at her for a long time, and in that moment, I didn't see someone trying to manipulate me. I didn't see someone making excuses. I saw a person who finally understood what her decisions had cost. But understanding didn't erase what happened. It didn't put anything back together. "So what are you doing here, really?" I asked. "What do you want from me?" "I wanted to look you in the eye and tell you I was sorry," she said. "Not the kind of sorry people say to stop a fight. The kind that means I know exactly what I did, and I don't expect anything in return. I'm sorry for the lies, the disrespect, the betrayal. I'm sorry I didn't fight for us when it would have mattered." I nodded slowly, not because I forgave her, but because it was the first thing she'd said that didn't make me want to walk out of the room. "I don't know what's going to happen to me next," she added, "but I'm not asking you to wait for me. I just needed to say this in front of you so you'd know I wasn't pretending anymore." She stood up, smoothed her coat, and looked at me one last time. "I'm leaving town for a while," she said. "I've got family out west. They offered a spare room. I'll be out of your way by tonight." I nodded again. "All right." She walked out without asking for anything else. No hug, no answer, no hint of hope. Just silence. The same way she left the garage that day, but this time, it felt like it was for good. I stayed on the bed for a while, letting the quiet fill the space where she used to be. There was no peace in the room, but there was honesty. And maybe that was the first real thing I'd had in a long time. The house stayed quiet for days after she left. I didn't get any more messages, no calls, not even a social media notification from her. That part surprised me. I thought she might try again after a few days of sitting with it, but she didn't. It was like she had finally understood that she had pushed too far, and that I wasn't going to play along with any of it anymore. It didn't feel like closure, but it was as close as I was going to get. The silence gave me time to breathe, to look at everything around me and figure out what I was actually going to do with this life I had left. The house wasn't a home anymore, just a structure filled with things we picked out together and memories I didn't trust. I started by clearing out the bedroom. I got rid of the things we bought together just to make space feel less like it belonged to both of us. I donated furniture, boxed up decorations, gave away old kitchen gear. I kept what mattered, what was mine. The rest was clutter I didn't need. People around me started asking questions. My brother called after noticing she hadn't shown up at our usual Sunday dinners. A friend from work asked why I wasn't wearing my ring anymore. I kept it simple. I told them the truth without dragging the whole thing into the mud. I said she had made choices I couldn't forgive, that we were done, and that I was focusing on getting my life back in order. Most people didn't pry after that. The few who did got the short version of the story and a look that told them not to push for more. It wasn't revenge that kept me moving. It was self-respect. After everything that happened, I refused to let her choices define the rest of my life. I started waking up earlier. I took Rex on longer walks. I cooked more meals at home, even though I wasn't great at it. I signed up for a weekend boxing class, something I had put off for years. I wasn't trying to reinvent myself. I just wanted to stop feeling like I was standing still in a place that wasn't mine anymore. Every day, I did one thing that felt like forward movement. Some days, that just meant laundry or picking up groceries. Other days, it meant going to a hardware store and buying tools to fix the garage door I never got around to. I wasn't healing. I was building something new. Quietly. On my own terms. Then one evening, about 3 weeks after she left, I got a letter. Not a text. Not an email. A physical envelope with her handwriting on it. I stared at it for a while before opening it. Inside was a single page, handwritten, no paragraphs, no signature at the bottom. Just a long, steady stream of words. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't make excuses. She told me she had quit her job and was staying with an aunt outside Phoenix. She was working part-time at a bookstore and trying to live a life without hiding anymore. She said she wasn't writing to fix anything, just to say that she finally understood what she'd lost and that she didn't expect to be a part of my life again. She ended the letter with one sentence that stuck with me more than anything else. She wrote, "If you ever wonder whether I felt the weight of what I did, the answer is yes, and I carry it every day." I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and slid it into a drawer with no plans to take it out again. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad either. I just felt like something had finally settled. Like the noise had stopped. She was gone, not just from the house, but from the space in my head where I used to replay everything she said, everything she did, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. I stopped needing answers. I stopped checking her social media. I stopped imagining conversations that would never happen. I just stopped. Some nights are still quiet in a way that feels too heavy. The silence reminds me that there was a time when I came home to someone who laughed at my dumb jokes and asked me about my day. But most nights, the quiet feels earned. Peaceful, Not because things are perfect, but because I know exactly where I stand. There's no guessing. No lies to untangle. No false hope. I didn't go looking for someone new. I'm not there yet. I might not be for a long time. Right now, I like the sound of my own thoughts. I like knowing the person in the mirror didn't give up on himself. He took a hit, yeah, but he didn't fold. He didn't beg. He didn't crawl back to something broken just to avoid being alone. I won't say I'm better off. That's not the kind of story this is. But I will say I'm not worse. I didn't lose everything. I lost someone who gave up too early. Someone who chose shortcuts and lies over truth and effort. And while that hurt, it also reminded me of who I am when everything falls apart. I'm the guy who picks up the pieces and keeps walking. She's somewhere else now, rebuilding or escaping, I don't know. That's her story. Mine is right here. In this house. In the quiet. In the choice to keep going. And that's enough for me.